Buck, welcome back. Great to have you. I take no joy in offering that up. I don't think it's funny. I'm alarmed. I'm sad for him. If I were married to him, I would say, honey, it's time we exit stage left. How on earth is he going to make it not just another 9 months, Buck, but another 5 years in this office?
Well, Megyn, my sense of this, and thank you for having me, is that Biden is effectively a figurehead, that when people are voting, I think he will make it through to the election. And if he doesn't, Kamala Harris will take over for him. I know there are a lot of theories out there about how there's some Democrat plan, but I think the logistics of that are far more complicated than some of the third options that people are discussing, meaning not Joe, not Kamala, something else. It's much more difficult than I think it initially sounds to a lot of folks, or than they initially think it would be, to just replace Joe Biden. He's an incumbent president. He's decrepit and falling apart. Yes. And I share your sense on that too. I remember I was very close with my maternal grandfather, and I remember in his final years what it was like to go see him. And Joe Biden actually reminds me of that. But we didn't expect him to be commander in chief at the time. We had very different understanding of what was going on with him. And the people that are in a position to do something about Joe Biden, most notably his wife, I think they view this as his last act of service. I think if you start to look at this from the other side of the chessboard and the power apparatus of the Democrats, as long as Joe Biden can stay in, he will stay in. And the whole point here is to get beyond the election. They think that he's the best option to defeat Donald Trump. And then it's very likely Kamala Harris will take over. And I think take over very early, assuming Biden wins, take over very early in another administration, or in the beginning of the administration, I should say, and start her own 8-year trend. At least that's the plan, right? She probably wouldn't win after 4. This is very obvious, though. We've seen this. We're at a point now, Megyn, where it's almost, it's too clear. And so people become numb to it. And there's no argument against it. Even Democrats recognize it, but they don't think of it as I'm voting for a CEO. They think of it as I'm voting for Coke or Pepsi. And that's it. It's just the brand and the machinery.
Dean Phillips, who's a Democrat trying to challenge Joe Biden, but he's getting the boot on the forehead. The Democrats won't have it. He tweeted out a couple of these videos the other day and wrote as follows: I'm attacked for being honest and saying the quiet part out loud, the part DC insiders only do in private. I admire our president. I voted for him and campaigned for him. He's visited my home and been gracious to me and my family and our country. But shame on all of you pretending everything is okay. You are leading us and him into a disaster, and you damn well know it. Gosh, it's true. It's right. It's not so simple, right? As he's going to win and then he's going to step down or die, and Kamala Harris. No one wants her. No one is electing her to be the president. That should be made right now. That switch, if that's what we're really voting for, should be made right now. They talk about how we have to have the Trump trials right now because people need to know what they're voting for. They need to know if he's a convicted felon or not before November. Shouldn't we know who's actually going to be president for the next 4 years, him or her, before we go to the ballot box in November?
Well, yeah, absolutely. But that would assume that there's some degree of honesty that the Democrat Party revolves around, which I just don't think is true. I think we could go into a great detail about how they are really a party now that is rooted in pretending, especially at election time, they pretend to be something other than that which they are, right? The way that Democrats win national elections is to generally have Democrats act more like centrists or Republicans close enough to the election that they can fool people. The perfect example of this was Joe Biden in 2020. As a uniter and a guy who would calm things down. Now he's got multiple DOJ federal indictments of his leading political opponent after 4 years of the most divisive presidency. I actually think Joe Biden's more divisive than Obama. I'll say that. I think that the stance that he took on forced vaccination of people over COVID was, as one single act, I think more divisive than anything actually Obama did. And I didn't think Obama was a uniter either. So the whole thing was a lie. And I think they're very concerned about that this time around. They're obviously just going to try to throw everything they can at Donald Trump. But the dishonesty of the campaign by no means, in my mind, discounts that this is what they're likely to do. And I think that with Kamala Harris, you see somebody who the system likes her. I use the term the apparatus for this kind of stuff. You could say that too. But the Democrat machinery elevated her to be Joe Biden's vice president in the first place. Democrat voters didn't want her, and yet they made her VP. It's
no one's ever wanted
her. Who?
No one.
No, yeah. I thought you were telling me someone wanted her. I'm like, who wanted her? No one wanted her.
No. This is. What was it? Willie Brown out in California? Like he wanted her. That's it.
I mean, it's something that you could see. Actually, she was very popular. I mean this. She was very popular in the CNN green room. There are Democrat news anchors that I think like the virtue signaling points they get from talking about how great Kamala Harris is. But that was before we saw the degree of, I'm not just talking about incompetence. Like no one thinks that she's a particularly bright or astute person. Let's just honestly. But the idea was, well, she can play the role and she can make people like her and she can be somewhat chameleon-like in her politics. And that's all been a total sham as well. They couldn't even give her fake make-believe jobs and roles like border czar without creating massive political liability for themselves. Hence, you don't even hear think about this. Look where we are with the border. Can you imagine if Kamala was still being called the border czar? I mean, it would be nothing but further disaster to her already plummeting brand. But that's why I think for them, it has to be Biden. And that's why I've said this all along. And I know this, Megyn, I know this is deeply cynical. Okay. I have a bet with Clay, my co-host and my friend, that it's going to be Joe Biden no matter what for the Democrats. And I've even said they will wheel him out with a blanket across his knees and a sippy cup on stage if they have to, because people are voting for the name, for the brand, for the system around him, not for the guy. Joe Biden's been an imbecile his whole life.
Does Clay think it's going to be Michelle Obama? Who does he think?
Yes, he thinks it's going to be Michelle Obama.
Okay, all right. I haven't made up my mind. I'm not ruling out the Michelle Obama option the way you are, but if I had to put money down, I'd put it on Biden. Here we have a big bet on it, Megyn. The View, the ladies of the View. I got to tell you, Buck Sexton, for once in your life, you're in agreement with Sonny Hostin. Okay, watch.
You guys ask me all the time, well, you can't support Trump. I will not support Trump, but why aren't you just backing Biden? I'm worried Biden's going to lose to Trump. In 2020, when he beat Donald Trump, a potato could have beat Donald Trump. We were in a global pandemic. The economy was in free fall.
But you know what? A potato could not have beat him. One thing that Joe Biden knows is he knows how to run the government. He knows this. Yeah. And there was nobody else in the pike. And to come out and say, get another candidate, when?
There isn't going to be another candidate. No. Yeah. The candidate is Joe Biden.
Yeah.
He has run this country well. He has so much to run on. He's got better economy. Inflation is down. Job growth. He has a platform to run on. The Republicans have zero to run on. And the best candidate that the Republicans could come up with is Donald Trump.
Okay, so I think we've kind of covered the ground in there. But I will say this. Never underestimate the ability of the Republicans to screw it up. Right? Like, I don't know. Like, they're the ones who said, we're not giving you Ukraine and Israel aid unless we get, concessions on the border. And then they got him. And I don't think anybody supports this border deal that's taken a hard look at it. But they were like, bye, and we're taking our ball and going home. That's how it's going to play in the media. They're already getting ripped on blowing it up and giving this to Joe Biden as an issue. Secondly, they go ahead, try to impeach Mayorkas, DHS secretary. They fall short. They didn't manage it. They couldn't. It's just every day the RNC chair is out, kind of leaving head down in disgrace. The RNC only has $8 million left. It's just every day, Buck. I realize they like Trump, but like the Republican Party, they're not totally wrong on the View when they're like, what are they offering? Because they look like a mess over there.
Well, part of it is they haven't been winning. And, we have to look at that with clear eyes, and we have to be honest about it. I mean, you have to have the political power to enact the programs and the margins, as we know, too, especially you're talking about the House and the Senate. So they've got this razor thin majority, and the smallest majority in the history, I believe, of the Congress, right? I mean, it's as small as it could possibly get. And then you have a very close to, evenly split Senate. And so there's not going to be some sweeping Republican policy change. To your point, I think that there should be a far more clear, comprehensive agenda that the Republicans are announcing. And on the straightforward things like the Mayorkas impeachment effort, I actually spoke to the Speaker of the House earlier this week about it, after it had failed. And he says, look, we're going to do it next week. He says that there was somebody who wasn't supposed to be there for the Democrats, but was in a hospital gown and slippers. And okay, whatever, fine. At the end of the day, the most important thing is that there's a vision for the country that allows them to win in the fall election, right? I mean, in November is what's going to determine the policies of the country, not, whether or not Republicans can make some stand or do something that is for the optics, but I don't think really changes anything. And just back to the Biden thing for a second. Look, I think it's rather straightforward. The polls look awful for Joe, and Democrats look like they are just walking toward annihilation in this election, at least at the presidential level. But there are still those polls that show, the same polls that show that Trump would crush Biden tomorrow. And I believe that's true. If the election were held tomorrow, if he gets convicted in this DC trial, I just had a caller call in today, Megyn, to our radio show. And I was a little surprised. He said, I voted for Trump twice. I'm excited to vote for him again. But if he's a convicted felon, I don't know if I can do it. I said, wait, hold on this stuff? You really feel that way? I was legitimately quite shocked. But the polling shows that if they can squeeze out a guilty verdict, Trump loses. He loses in all of the swing states. He loses bigly in the November election. So that's a way they change all this around. And old man Biden doesn't really matter anymore. And that's just the trick that they may pull that we already know is coming, right? There can be other stuff as well. So I just never like to underestimate the deviousness of the Democrat Party.
Discover a holistic wellness solution with Bon Charge, a brand dedicated to optimizing every aspect of your life. Grounded in science and inspired by nature, their evidence-based products cover a broad spectrum of premium wellness items. From enhancing sleep and performance to boosting energy, accelerating recovery, and balancing hormones, Bon Charge offers a diverse range of benefits. Consider the infrared sauna blanket from Bon Charge that they say can burn extra calories and detoxify. This innovative blanket elevates your heart rate, simulating the effects of physical exercise. Bon Charge says sweating during the process helps eliminate heavy metals and toxins from your body, and that setting it up takes less than a minute. It rapidly heats up for a quick and convenient experience. For a limited time, save 15% by visiting boncharge.com/MK. Use the coupon code MK. That's BONCHARGE.com/MK and use coupon code MK to save yourself 15%. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.